The I Ching, also known as the Classic of Changes or Book of Changes in English, is an ancient divination text and the oldest of the Chinese classics, possessing a history of more than 2.5 millennia of commentary and interpretation. The I Ching is an influential text read throughout the world, providing inspiration to the worlds of religion, psychoanalysis, business, literature, and art. Originally a divination manual in the Western Zhou period, over the course of the Warring States period and early imperial period it was transformed into a cosmological text with a series of philosophical commentaries known as the Ten Wings, after becoming part of the five classics in the 2nd century BC. The I Ching was the subject of scholarly commentary and the basis for divination practice for centuries across the Far East, and eventually took on an influential role in Western understanding of Eastern thought. The I Ching uses a type of divination called cleromancy, which produces apparently random numbers. 4 numbers, 6 through 9, are turned into a hexagram, which can then be looked up in the I Ching book, arranged in an order known as the Qingwen sequence. The interpretation of the readings found in the I Ching is a matter of centuries of debate, and many commentators have used the book symbolically, often to provide guidance for moral decision-making as informed by Taoism and Confucianism. The hexagrams themselves have often acquired cosmological significance and paralleled with many other traditional names for the processes of change, such as yin and yang and wuzing. The divination text Zhou Yi. The core of the I Ching is a Western Zhou divination text called the Changes of Zhou. Various modern scholars suggest dates ranging between the 10th and 4th centuries BC for the assembly of the text in approximately its current form, based on a comparison of the language of the Zhou Yi with dated bronze inscriptions. Edward Shaughnessy dated its compilation in its current form to the early decades of the reign of King Shan of Zhou, in the last quarter of the 9th century BC. A copy of the text in the Shanghai Museum corpus of bamboo and wooden slips shows that the Zhou Yi was used throughout all levels of Chinese society in its current form by 300 BC, but still contained small variations as late as the Warring States period. It is possible that other divination systems existed at this time. The Writer Zhou named 2 other such systems, the Liashan and the Yìjīng. Name and origins. The name Zhou Yi literally means the changes of the Zhou dynasty. The changes involved have been interpreted as the transformations of hexagrams, of their lines, or of the numbers obtained from the divination. Feng Yulan proposed that the word for changes originally meant easy, as in a form of divination easier than the oracle bones, but there is little evidence for this. There is also an ancient folk etymology that sees the character for changes as containing the sun and moon, the cycle of the day. Modern sinologists believe the character to be derived either from an image of the sun emerging from clouds, or from the content of a vessel being changed into another. Traditionally, the Zhou Yi is associated with the legendary world ruler Fu Xi. According to the canonical Great Commentary, Fu Xi observed the patterns of the world and created the 8 trigrams. In order to become thoroughly conversant with the numinous and bright and to classify the myriad things, the Zhou Yi itself does not contain this legend and indeed says nothing about its own origins. The Writer Zhou, however, also claims that the hexagrams of the Zhou Yi were derived from an initial set of 8 trigrams. During the Han Dynasty there were various opinions about the historical relationship between the trigrams and the hexagrams. Eventually, a consensus formed around 2nd century AD scholar Ma Rong's attribution of the text to the joint work of Fu Xi, King Wen of Zhou, the Duke of Zhou, and Confucius, but this traditional attribution is no longer generally accepted. Structure. The basic unit of the Zhou Yi is the hexagram, a figure composed of 6 stacked horizontal lines. Each line is either broken or unbroken. The received text of the Zhou Yi contains all 64 possible hexagrams, along with the hexagram's name, a short hexagram statement, and 6 line statements. The statements were used to determine the results of divination, but the reasons for having two different methods of reading the hexagram are not known, and it is not known why hexagram statements would be read over line statements or vice versa. The book opens with the first hexagram statement, Yuan Heng Li Zhen. These four words, translated traditionally by James Legge as originating and penetrating, advantageous and firm, are often repeated in the hexagram statements and were already considered an important part of I Ching interpretation in the 6th century BC. Edward Shaughnessy describes this statement as affirming in initial receipt of an offering, beneficial for further divining. The word zhen was also used for the verb divine in the oracle bones of the late Shang dynasty, which preceded the Zhou. It also carried meanings of being or making upright or correct, and was defined by the Eastern Han scholar Zheng Shan as to inquire into the correctness of a proposed activity. The names of the hexagrams are usually words that appear in their respective line statements, but in 5 cases an unrelated character of unclear purpose appears. The hexagram names could have been chosen arbitrarily from the line statements, but it is also possible that the line statements were derived from the hexagram names. The line statements, which make up most of the book, are exceedingly cryptic. Each line begins with a word indicating the line number, base, 2, 3, 4, 5, top, and either the number 6 for a broken line, or the number 9 for a whole line. Hexagrams 1 and 2 have an extra line statement, named Yong, following the line number. The line statements may make oracular or prognostic statements. Some line statements also contain poetry or references to historical events. Usage. Archaeological evidence shows that Zhou dynasty divination was grounded in kleromancy, the production of seemingly random numbers to determine divine intent. The Zhou Yi provided a guide to kleromancy that used the stalks of the yarrow plant, but it is not known how the yarrow stalks became numbers, or how specific lines were chosen from the line readings. In the hexagrams, broken lines were used as shorthand for the numbers chapter 6 and 8, and solid lines were shorthand for values of 7 and 9. The Great Commentary contains a late classic description of a process where various numerological operations are performed on a bundle of 50 stalks, leaving remainders of 6 to 9. Like the Zhou Yi itself, yarrow stalk divination dates to the Western Zhou period, although its modern form is a reconstruction. The ancient narratives Zhaojuan and Guoyu contain the oldest descriptions of divination using the Zhou Yi. The two histories describe more than 20 successful divinations conducted by professional soothsayers for royal families between 671 BC and 487 BC. The method of divination is not explained, and none of the stories employ predetermined commentaries, patterns, or interpretations. Only the hexagrams and line statements are used. By the 4th century BC, the authority of the Zhou Yi was also cited for rhetorical purposes, without relation to any stated divination. The Zhaojuan does not contain records of private individuals, but Qin dynasty records found at Shuihudi show that the hexagrams were privately consulted to answer questions such as business, health, children. In determining lucky days, the most common form of divination with the I Ching in use today is a reconstruction of the method described in these histories. In the 300 BC Great Commentary, and later in the Huinanzi and the Lunheng, from the Great Commentary's description, the Neo-Confucian Zhu Shi reconstructed a method of yarrow stalk divination that is still used throughout the Far East. In the modern period, Gao Heng attempted his own reconstruction, which varies from Zhu Shi in places. Another divination method, employing coins, became widely used in the Tang dynasty and is still used today. In the modern period, alternative methods such as specialized dice and cartomancy have also appeared. In the Zhaojuan stories, individual lines of hexagrams are denoted by using the genitive particle ji. followed by the name of another hexagram where that specific line had another form. In later attempts to reconstruct ancient divination methods, the word ji was interpreted as a verb meaning moving to, an apparent indication that hexagrams could be transformed into other hexagrams. However, there are no instances of changeable lines in the Zhaojuan. In all 12 out of 12 line statements quoted, the original hexagrams are used to produce the oracle. The classic, I Ching. In 136 BC, Emperor Wu of Han named the Zhou-yi the first among the classics, dubbing it the Classic of Changes or I Ching. Emperor Wu's placement of the I Ching among the 5 classics was informed by a broad span of cultural influences that included Confucianism, Daoism, legalism, yin the yang cosmology, and Wuxing physical theory. While the Zhou-yi does not contain any cosmological analogies, the I Ching was read as a microcosm of the universe that offered complex, symbolic correspondences. The official edition of the text was literally set in stone, as one of the Xiping stone classics. The canonized I Ching became the standard text for over 2,000 years, until alternate versions of the Zhou-yi and related texts were discovered in the 20th century. 10 Wings. Part of the canonization of the Zhou-yi bound it to a set of 10 commentaries called the 10 Wings. The 10 Wings are of a much later provenance than the Zhou-yi, and are the production of a different society. The Zhou-yi was written in early Old Chinese, while the 10 Wings were written in a predecessor to Middle Chinese. The specific origins of the 10 Wings are still a complete mystery to academics, regardless of their historical relation to the text. The philosophical depth of the 10 Wings made the I Ching a perfect fit to Han period Confucian scholarship. The inclusion of the 10 Wings reflects a widespread recognition in ancient China, found in the Zhaojuan and other pre-Han texts, that the I Ching was a rich moral and symbolic document useful for more than professional divination. Arguably the most important of the 10 Wings is the Great Commentary or Shixia, which dates to roughly 300 BC. The Great Commentary describes the I Ching as a microcosm of the universe and a symbolic description of the processes of change. By partaking in the spiritual experience of the I Ching, the Great Commentary states, the individual can understand the deeper patterns of the universe. Among other subjects, it explains how the 8 trigrams proceeded from the eternal oneness of the universe through 3 bifurcations. The other wings provide different perspectives on essentially the same viewpoint, giving ancient, cosmic authority to the I Ching. For example, the Wenyan provides a moral interpretation that parallels the first 2 hexagrams, and, with heaven and earth, and the Shuoga attributes to the symbolic function of the hexagrams the ability to understand self, world, and destiny. Throughout the 10 Wings, there are passages that seem to purposefully increase the ambiguity of the base text, pointing to a recognition of multiple layers of symbolism. The Great Commentary associates knowledge of the I Ching with the ability to delight in heaven and understand fate. The sage who reads it will see cosmological patterns and not despair in mere material difficulties. The Japanese word for metaphysics, Kijijagaku, is derived from a statement found in the Great Commentary that what is above form, Xingyiakutashang, is called Tao, what is under form is called a tool. The word has also been borrowed into Korean and re-borrowed back into Chinese. The 10 Wings were traditionally attributed to Confucius, possibly based on a misreading of the records of the Grand Historian, although it rested on historically shaky grounds. The association of the I Ching with Confucius gave weight to the text and was taken as an article of faith throughout the Han and Tang dynasties. The I Ching was not included in the burning of the Confucian classics, and textual evidence strongly suggests that Confucius did not consider the Zhou-yi a classic. An ancient commentary on the Zhou-yi found at Mawangdui portrays Confucius as endorsing it as a source of wisdom first and an imperfect divination text second. Hexagrams. In the canonical I Ching, the hexagrams are arranged in an order dubbed the King Wen sequence after King Wen of Zhou, who founded the Zhou dynasty and supposedly reformed the method of interpretation. The sequence generally pair hexagrams with their upside-down equivalents, although in 8 cases hexagrams are paired with their inversion. Another order, found at Mawangdui in 1973, arranges the hexagrams into 8 groups sharing the same upper trigram. But the oldest known manuscript, found in 1987 and now held by the Shanghai Library, was almost certainly arranged in the King Wen sequence. And it has even been proposed that a pottery paddle from the Western Zhou period contains 4 hexagrams in the King Wen sequence. Whichever of these arrangements is older, it is not evident that the order of the hexagrams was of interest to the original authors of the Zhou Yi. The assignment of numbers, binary or decimal, to specific hexagrams is a modern invention. The following table numbers the hexagrams in King Wen order.